Welcome to the City Current Radio Show. I'm your host, Andrew Bartolotta. Today, we're diving into organizational culture, employee experience, diversity and inclusion, and leader effectiveness with organizational psychologist, Dr. Gena Cox. Gena, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it is entirely my pleasure. I love the work that you do, and it's just so much fun to know that I'm going to be able to share my ideas with an audience that is interested in, being a force for good. Thank you.
Absolutely. So give listeners a quick history for you and your career.
Well, I'm an organizational psychologist, and I like to say that what that means is that the one thing I know, don't ask me to fix a car, but if you want to know anything about how humans behave in the workplace, I'm your girl. I study the dynamics of human interaction in the workplace and have done so for 20 something plus years. And in everything that I do, I'm always trying to help leaders as individuals be more effective, leaders as groups be more effective on a whole enterprise, a whole organization. I'm trying to make sure that the way, the environment in which people are asked to do their jobs is one that's healthy psychologically and makes people want to be there, not just to do the job. So I'm all about human behavior at work. And then within that, there are some specific topics that are of particular focus of mine. There's the leader development piece, because I'm also an executive coach, which simply means that, I help leaders to figure out what they can do to be more effective and to achieve their career goals. I'm very, very interested in understanding employee opinion. So I do a lot of employee opinion measurement to really figure out, well, what is that experience? Because one of the things that I've known for a long time, but that was reinforced in this last year, is that sometimes, especially executives, don't really know what's going on in terms of what employees are thinking. And I do focus on diversity and inclusion issues to the extent that I think that diversity and inclusion is a subset of leadership. It's not something over to the side. So all the work that I do and have always done has been to help leaders be effective in managing everybody who works in their group or their organization. There probably isn't anything about how humans behave in the workplace that doesn't get me all excited and wanting to talk more about it.
Well, let's talk about a hot topic right now. In a recent blog post on your website, you talked about the need to rehumanize the workplace. And with this great resignation of almost 40% of today's working class thinking about either quitting or changing jobs due to work-life harmony, COVID-19, pay, and societal factors, what are some work-first models you think that will change in the future? Or what are some trends you expect to see for the future of work?
I love that question because I think we can all agree it's going to be different. And up until the COVID-19 pandemic, none of us ever thought that our bosses would agree we could work from home. In fact, most of the time they said no. And then overnight, the world has changed. So I'm starting with the presumption that not only has it changed, but that the changes that have occurred are going to persist. So what I try to tell my clients is to think about this in a couple of different ways. But the first thing that I like to focus on is that relationship between the employee and his or her manager, because a majority of what it is that causes an employee to be engaged and satisfied at work or not has to do with the way the manager behaves. And now we're in this remote environment. And I say, don't use 2019 behaviors to deal with 2021, realities in the workplace. So for example, one of the things that managers tell me, or that I know from studying them, is that they're extremely stressed. So imagine, as you know, a situation where what we have is that 20-something% of the workforce has said that it's going to be moving voluntarily because it now has the freedom to do so. An even larger proportion, 40-something%, is looking for a new job or expects to be in a new job. And you have people who are saying, I'm thinking about the purpose of my work in a completely different way. What that boils down to is managers are very stressed because if you've got a team of 30, there's a possibility that every one of those 30 people that used to be together in one place is now going in 30 different directions. Some proportion of them are changing jobs. Some proportion of them are asking you for a different schedule. The bottom line is, so managers, who are humans too, have their own personal challenges, the same ones that every other employee has, but they have those. So that aspect of the managers as a human is one of the first things I try to remind organizations that, well, I try to say, not necessarily remind, I ask them to think about that. This is new. So then you get the other side of this dyad, which is the person that the people that this manager manages. and now in a remote environment. And so what I say to employees on the other side of this is, are you thinking of your manager as a human? Well, if you didn't before, you have got to do it now. Because here's what I have to say. I know there are things that you want that only the manager can provide. But guess what? If I said to you, if I explain, like I just did, all the various pressures that are on managers' backs, then what that tells me is that it's no longer good enough for you to only talk to your manager when you want something, especially now. You're working remotely, have got these additional challenges. So I'm asking employees to think from a human first perspective as well. When they think about their managers, remember that they're humans too. So you know that your life has been disrupted. You know you want a flexible schedule. You know that you're having difficulty figuring out, so should you send the kids to school, and all of the various concerns that you have as an individual. Well, guess what? Your manager has those concerns too. It might not be a bad idea to learn a little bit about what is on your manager's mind. What are his or her fears? What are the things that he or she needs, new kinds of support that you can give that you never gave before? If you think about your manager the way that you would think about another person you cared about, and then come in and ask your question, I think you're more likely to be successful in this environment. So the summary answer to that bunch of stuff that I just said is that the relationship between managers and employees will be changing and are changed. And I think the more successful managers, and then also the more successful employees, will be the ones that can see that and recognize that they need to start behaving differently. So that's that dyad. But if I think about this now and I step back and I think about the executives of the organization, for the entire enterprise who are trying to sort of make this work, I say to them, they have got to make sure that they're allowing everyone in their organization the space that they need to ask for what they want. They're asking them, what do you need? They're not only focused on, you can no longer just say we're getting the work done. You have to figure out, what do the humans in the organization need in order to thrive and get it done? So, I'll stop there, but I do say that the big difference is that the world of work has changed, and I challenge everyone in that environment to just think about it on a more personal level than before.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing from you also is that there needs to be more empathy involved, and also that relationship building that you may not get inside the office, just continuing that and checking in with your manager and just having that continual conversation will help guide your workplace decisions.
Absolutely, Andrew, because here's one of the things that doesn't get said a lot. If you talk about the before and the now and the future, and we agree that there's a difference, the fact is that most employees used to go home at the end of the day and complain about their managers to their loved ones and their friends, right? Meanwhile, at work, they're poker facing it and pretending like everything is okay. And they're not telling the manager when they do something wrong or offensive or problematic. They're just faking it. Everybody's been faking it. So actually, even over and above the fact that I want people to be empathetic, I'm also maybe asking that the value of thinking about one another as humans is that maybe we can also be a little bit more honest in our interactions, and recognize that our experiences don't get better if we don't help the people who have the power to make them better, if we don't help them too. I'm challenging employees and their managers to think more about partnership and less about just the power difference. So yes, empathy, connection, honesty, and a purpose, and all of those, and trust, obviously, are then some of the dynamics that I think are enhanced, that frankly, what we're talking about is stuff we never did this before. We were not doing it. So we ought to start doing it.
I think that's so important. And I love that you're not only talking about this, but also gaining the employees' opinions, the leadership, and really gauging what they're dealing with, but also talking and living with diversity and inclusion in the workplace. You talk a lot about inclusion strategy. What does that mean, and how is it different than diversity and inclusion work?
Well, the way that I think about it is that certainly since the 1960s, with the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the creation of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and so on, we've had these entities and these legal pressures for organizations to understand that there are differences in the workforce, that they should hire people regardless of those differences. They should promote them, they should give them the same opportunity, and so on. But frankly, most organizations have kind of dealt with this issue from that legalistic compliance perspective. They've had people in these roles called diversity and inclusion, and most of those people who have done those jobs have great intention, right? They want to do good, but frankly, they never got enough money to do something that was meaningful. And in fact, mostly it was just about counting heads. Do we have 5 of these? And do we have 8 of that? Okay, fine. Okay, that's great. But so diversity is about counting heads, but inclusion is about, well, what is the experience of those people in that organization? And what has changed since 2020 is that inclusion is also, people are having a clearer understanding that it isn't, even now, if you hire more people who look different, that's great. Woohoo. But now you have more people coming into a culture where they might not be welcome. So you still have to work on the day-to-day experience. That's what I think about when I think about inclusion. So why I say inclusion strategy is, first of all, I want leaders to understand that I'm not just interested in, should you hire more people? Should you hire more women? Should you hire more brown people? I'm not only interested in that. And in fact, I'm only interested in that to the extent that you should hire in a representative way. I don't believe in, I'm not looking for a quote or any of those sorts of things. Right. So that's good. But I think that's the minimum, that's like the minimum thing that you can do. What I really want to ask you is, for those 100 additional people that you hire or put into different roles or promote, what experiences are they having? Because I happen to know on a personal level, and also from looking at hundreds and thousands of data points over decades, that very often people of color are having less positive experiences. And you might not know it if you're an executive because they don't talk about it. So the only way you would get people to talk about it, it goes back to what I was just saying, that I'd like to see be different in this virtual environment where I'm asking employees to be open, and I'm asking managers to set up more of a partnership. This is related to that. If I don't feel like I'm in a trusting environment, and if I feel like my honesty is going to cause me to be punished, or if I, heaven forbid, could lose my job, I'm never going to do it. So inclusion and inclusion strategy is about the leader understanding that they've got to create this holistic environment that truly sort of breeds these positive behaviors for everybody and enhances trust for everybody, reduces, fearful, retribution and those kinds of behaviors. And also what inclusion strategy is about is that business leaders have got to be the ones that set the tone for the entire organization. We can't just expect that a business partner in human resources who has diversity and inclusion responsibilities will have the power and the clout to move the behavior of an entire organization. What we really need is for the leaders, the top leaders of the organization, to say, this is what we believe, this is what we want, this is what we will not tolerate in terms of behaviors that are not inclusive. And I'm setting the expectation for my whole company, and I am holding you accountable for helping me build this better workplace for everybody.
What puts a smile on your face when you look at the work you've been able to accomplish in helping people and organizations?
Well, over all of the years of my professional career, I would say that I get the greatest satisfaction, have always gotten the greatest satisfaction from working directly with executive leaders, where I'm able to where they have like a moment where they go, oh, I didn't know that. And then we start to talk about how they can use the new knowledge that they've gotten to help change some behavior that is going to help a group of people that they lead and that sort of thing. So I love those experiences, and I've had many of them over over my career. More recently, I wrote an article in Harvard Business Review with my colleague David Mansfield, and it's really about 5 things that executive leaders can do to drive inclusion strategy. And I've been getting a really big kick out of that response to that article, because what those who have appreciated the article has said is that they like that we're giving them some specific things that they can do. Now, these are not obviously the individual actions that any one leader should do. This is still at a fairly high strategic level. But in other words, what I am feeling really good about is another one of those, I didn't know that kind of moments where people have read the article and said, oh, I didn't know that this particular fact was true. And now that you've pointed that out and told me what I can do to help deal with that, I at least have a sense of, a direction about something that I can do to make a positive difference. That's really, really making me happy. And in fact, I'm writing a whole book about it. I'm so happy.
And speaking of writing a book, talk about what this book is going to be about. Give listeners a little sneak peek,
Yes.
and then talk about that process. And then we will talk about where people can learn more about you and your work.
Oh, well, thank you, Andrew. So it's early days yet on the book, although I'm at the point of finishing the first draft and getting it off to the publisher next week. So I'm under the gun. So all I can tell you is that this is definitely a book for leaders, especially executive leaders, but any leader and any, a business school student or anyone who anticipates being a leader or wants to be a better leader, to really help clarify for leaders what role should they play in defining the inclusion strategy for their organization and making it come to life. So this is not a book that is geared to like people who call themselves diversity and inclusion practitioners, although they certainly would benefit from it. What I'm trying to do is to bring leaders into the conversation in a way that they haven't been in the conversation before and say, I can show you how to do this. This is probably not as cumbersome or complicated as you think it is. There are some things that you can do as just a leader that will make you more effective and therefore also make your environment more inclusive. The book is going to be published next year.
Great. So where can people go to learn more about you, your future book, and work?
There are a couple of places where you can go to learn more about me. LinkedIn is probably the easiest place. And it's easy because you can see a variety of the things that I do and get a really good sense of the way that I think and how I solve problems. So on LinkedIn, my name is Gena Cox, Genacox. Most Genas are spelled with an I. So if you spell it with an E, you're probably going to find the right person. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me on the website that currently exists, which is www.feelshuman.com. And feelshuman.com is really, feels human is really my slogan, my hashtag, the whole idea that I'm saying to leaders. Look, if there's one little secret that I can tell you that you might be surprised to hear, it is if you just be a little bit more, do things in such a way where every employee feels more human in the workplace, guess what? Problem solved. I don't know how we ever got to the point where we've needed decades of leadership theories that ultimately haven't been all that helpful and somehow miss the fact that all people have ever wanted was a more human experience.
I agree. Dr. Gena Cox, thank you so much for coming on the City Current Radio Show and sharing more about your efforts in the workplace and diversity and inclusion.
It has been such a pleasure, great fun, and thank you for having me, Andrew.